Welcome to this Gadgets for Families bonus episode. So, in the past, we've restructured the show a little bit, but in the past, we always had a post show. We would
Yep.
release it as a separate video, but now that we're focused on video first, it really is just a bonus topic or a bonus episode, bonus show, whatever you want to call it. We'll figure out a really
Yeah.
cool name for it. But this is normally the time when we get a little more technical, a little more geeky, or deep dive, or just go off on whatever topic. So with the
Yeah.
lack of news other than all the legal stuff, which we don't want to cover, we've been doing some fun things during the
Right.
main show. So last week for this, we did talked about retro video games, but this week
Yep.
I left the post show blank and Jason dropped in a topic. So Jason,
Right.
what are we going to cover?
More retro video games, though.
Nice.
So I like the idea of leaving the post show open because, it's more fluid. It's more, it's more us, right? We if there's something that we want to dive deeper into in the main show, we can say, oh, we'll just go in on it more in the post show, so we don't, drag out the main show. So I like the idea of leaving it open. So I wanted to talk about not necessarily retro video games, even though it falls into the topic, but some of the so I'm a video game collector, right? Not necessarily a game, the game cartridges and discs and stuff, but more of a system collector. I like the history. I like being able to play on these older systems and stuff. So I have a lot of them. So I wanted to share a couple of stories because not only do I like having these systems, but in the hunt tracking down these systems and getting them and adding them to my collection, I like the stories that go along with them. You know what I mean? So I wanted to share a couple of stories that I have that I thought was really cool. I think they'll make some cool shorts too. So um, we mentioned in the main show with the Nintendo, right? I remember getting my first Nintendo, and all of the neighborhood kids would come over from the apartments we lived in, all of my friends and stuff, and we would spend hours and hours playing Duck Hunt and Mario and other games that were out at the time. And it really not only made my love of video games stronger, but the love of my friends and stuff too. It helped us to bond over those video games. So um, I'm not going to go into that one so much. I'm going to talk about some of the ones that I acquired as an adult and some of the stories that I got in. So the first one.
Can I just tell a story about the Nintendo?
Yeah, go ahead.
Since that one's not on my list, but we had the Nintendo. We moved to a new town,
Mm-hmm.
and track and field was one of the funnest games that they had on the
Right.
Nintendo. And
Yep.
the Nintendo was a D-pad and two buttons,
Mm-hmm.
and in order to run, you had to alternate between the B and the A buttons. Well, my dad's in there playing with us, and we realized that if you licked your finger and ran it back and
And when
forth
right.
across it, you could break every single record in track and
Yeah.
field. So that's one of my fondest memories with the Nintendo, because it was my brother, my dad, and I, and all of us had blisters on our
Right.
pointer fingers.
Right,
from
because no
doing
matter
that.
how much you lick your finger, it still
Yep.
got hot and it still dried
Yep.
out. Yep, I
And you
remember.
went through controllers too. So
Yes, it did. It was pretty rough on the controllers. Now, did you guys have the power pad? So, like we talked about renting the VHS system and cassettes, the movies, we used to be able to rent the power pad from my local VCR store. So we would rent it from time to time. So we stayed in apartments and we lived upstairs. So my mom quickly realized that was a no-go for us when we were banging and the neighbors banging on the ceiling in their apartment. So I did get to experience the power pad a couple of times, but yeah, that was really cool with track and field.
Yep. All right. Sorry, that was my interruption.
No. It was cool. It was cool, and that's what we're talking about are these memories and stuff. But this particular one, and I'll try to get through it without crying. But my Atari 800, right? It was a system I didn't own as a child. It came out before I was born. But again, in my quest to collect all of these systems, I got one. So I met with a little old lady And I'm like, okay, thank you for the deal or whatever. She gave me a pretty good deal on it, and she was like, this system belonged to my husband. She was like, are you going to play on it or anything like that? And I'm like, it's really just for my collection. I'm going to power it on and see if it works or whatever. I'll buy, one game from eBay or something like that, which is what I usually do is buy a little cheap eBay game or something. And she was like, well, let me tell you about this system. And she went on to tell me her husband, whose name was Larry, back when the system came out, was diagnosed with cancer. They got married for a few years. And she said, all he can do was, the chemo. And at the time, back then, it was rougher than it is now.
Yeah.
Even technology and medical technology has changed a lot, though people can actually live their lives and function and stuff and be on chemo. Well, back then, there was no such thing, right? So she was his full time caregiver or whatever. He played that. And then he moved on to the Atari. He got a Nintendo. And he beat cancer several times, and it kind of came back on him a few times. And she said that he played all the way up into the original Xbox came out. And you heard me mention Halo. Halo was a big deal for gamers, first person shooters and stuff like that. And she said he was a big Halo fan, but how he got started was on that Atari 800 that I bought from him. It had a cover. It had their law firm on the top. It was an Atari cover, and it had their law firm on the top or whatever. And I just thought that it was just a wonderful piece of gaming history to have to be attached to someone who loved this system so much, and it was his introduction into gaming and stuff. And now I own it, and it's a part of my collection and everything. So really big thing, really big deal for me. And I love that system for that story that she gave me, and I just
Yeah. That's great.
so yeah. I'm not crying. You're crying. So the next one is a bit more fun. So this one is my arcade cabinet, my Pac-Man cabinet. Now I told you, me and my wife love Miss Pac-Man. That's what we grew up with. But I have one that's the original Pac-Man. Now this system, this cabinet belonged to the FBI chapter here in Houston, the FBI headquarters here in Houston. So the person used to work there. I don't think he was an actual agent. I can't remember what he told me, but he worked in the building every day for 20 or so years. And they were closing down that building and moving to the new one. I actually know where the new one is over on 290, Highway 290. Real fancy, weird looking building. But I guess whenever they were moving into that one, they tell him, hey, do you want this Pac-Man machine? Like, yeah, sure, I'll take it and take it home to the garage. So he takes it home to the garage, and his oldest son grew up playing it, right? They had it in the garage. All the neighborhood kids would come over and play it in the garage. So he told me he had that game. He had an old, I think it was either Golden Axe or Galaga. I can't remember what the next arcade machine was, but he had a third machine, and this one was an old Coke machine. Now, instead of keeping Coke in the machine, he kept his Budweiser for him and his buddies whenever they would hang out in the garage. So he says one day he gets a call from the neighbors a couple of houses down across the street, and they're like, I don't ever want my son coming to your house ever again. You tell your children, you tell your son to stay away from my kid. So he's like, well, what's going on? They just play games in the garage. My son is a pretty good kid. He told me he was away for college when I got the game, bought the system for him. He's like, what's going on? She was like, my son came home drunk.
Oh
So he was
no.
like, wait, drunk? So then it clicked to him that his son and the neighborhood kids were drinking all of his Budweiser from the Coke machine. So his wife made him shut down the garage, because it wasn't just that neighbor to complain. Several other neighbors complained to his wife about their kids coming home drunk because they were in his Budweiser. So the wife made him shut down the garage arcade. He punished his son, banished him from the garage. And fast forward a few years now, his younger son, who is now a teenager of driving age, wants to raise money to buy his first vehicle, and to raise money, he gave him permission to sell that Pac-Man arcade. So,
Nice.
yeah, really cool story that comes along with some of this stuff. And I whenever I buy a new system, except for online, because you buy stuff on eBay, there's no communication; it's just a transaction or whatever. But when I buy stuff locally, I love to talk to them briefly about one because I want to know if they're a gamer like me, or if they're a reseller, if they got the game system out of a storage, or if it belonged to them originally, or something like that. So yeah, so the the Atari, I'm the second owner of it, proud owner. I take care of it. The story that comes with that just gives me a sense of pride. But the Pac-Man arcade came with a pretty funny story that
Yeah, that is pretty funny.
that I love so much. So yeah, that's just part of the stuff I love. I love, and I'll share some more of these stories, guys, if y'all love those type, because there's some more systems that I have that have been through some pretty rough times and some pretty good times too with some of these other ones. So yeah, really, really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Uh,
I don't have any cool stories. I don't collect a lot of stuff, but I did stick down in our
right.
topics list things that we do
Yeah.
collect. So, the system I have right now, the Switch, which please come out with the new Nintendo Switch. But it keeps thinking maybe it's going to be next year. So
Yeah, I'm seeing.
there's not enough smoke for it
Yeah,
to be coming out anytime soon. But
I was holding out hope too because it seemed like some of my rumors were still saying soon, but now it's looking towards end of the year or early
yeah,
next year.
no, my grandma bought me mine, and so I'll never give it away. Just
Right.
because she's getting up there, but that Nintendo, I got to figure out how to have two switches running because Nintendo was not good about that kind of stuff. It is
Right.
not pleasant. But um, I was planning on buying one and almost pulled the trigger. And the Mario Special Edition was coming out, and it was red controllers, and it came with a case that had Mario on one side and Bowser on the other side. I think is what it is.
Yep.
Mario on the red side, Bowser on the black side. That was coming out, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go buy that. Walmart had them. It was getting close to Christmas, and I get laid off.
Yeah.
And so when I called and talked to my grandma and told her, she was really upset with the company that laid me off. Like really, really mad. Like
Right.
mom and grandma totally went mama bear
Yeah.
when I got laid off. And so I was talking to her and I said, yeah, I'm glad I didn't pull the trigger and blah, blah, blah. And the next thing, a day or so later, I get a call from my sister that says, so grandma's buying you the Nintendo Switch for Christmas. And I need to make sure I know exactly which one because my sister did all the shopping for my mom and my grandma that they weren't doing in person, right? And this
Hmm.
was definitely out of their wheelhouse. So she's like, okay, which one is it? And so I'm like, well, she doesn't need to do that. She's like, yeah, have you met our grandma? So, it's one of those, you don't tell
Yeah.
grandma no,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. She's gonna do
Um,
it because she wants to do it. Right.
yeah, it's like you're spending too much money. Well, you're not the boss of me. That's the answer I would generally get from her. So, I've still got it. I love it. It'll go in a box. I've got a couple of things like the original Apple Watch is still in my drawer here.
Yeah.
I even sold the red Apple Watch at one point. Right, I
Okay.
didn't hang on to that. I probably should have, but yeah, the original Apple Watch because that's the only brand new Apple product that I've had V1 of.
Right.
Right, so I still have that, but I'll hang on to that. I'll hang on to that Switch, and that was really cool. It was great to not have or to do that, and like I think I told the story about Contra, very very first on that, and
Hmm.
was able to play that while I was at her house. She was so worried when that came that it didn't have a
It
game,
is.
and
Yep.
because she went to so my sister ordered it and she did pick up at Walmart, so she went to pick it up and she's getting and she's like, what game comes with this? And the guy was like, there isn't a game with it. She's like,
Yeah.
really? Maybe he got the wrong one. And the guy was like, no, if this is the one he wanted, he'll be
Yeah.
just fine, right? Because I bought Contra and I signed up for Nintendo's subscription thing, and I had all of the classic Nintendo games and the six
Yeah.
and the the NES games, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, so that's that it's nice and heartwarming, and it was at a tough time, right? Because I had never been laid off before, and you're trying to
Oh, that
figure
was
out
your
what
first
you're
time being laid off.
yeah, you're
Okay.
trying to figure out what you're going to do next. And I knew I was going to do my own thing, and I already had a client lined up, but he had told me, or I hoped I had a client lined up, but he
Hmm.
said we're not going to talk till after the first of the year. And this was like the 8th or 9th of December.
Yeah.
And And he just told me, he said, you need to go spend time with your family. Well, I'm freaking out, right? Totally
Hmm.
freaking out about not having to be able to support my family and stuff like that. So it was just, it was a huge blessing that she was
Right.
willing to do that. And I still love it. And I have to limit how much I play on it. Otherwise I'm in
Yeah.
trouble. I mean,
It'll consume you. Yep.
yeah. I mean, right now I'm in another season um of NBA 2K, and of course one of my all-stars got hurt, so we've been
Mm.
struggling for the last few games. But I also, and on top of it, when I won the championship the season before, when I started the new season, I bumped up the difficulty level, so I think I'm on all-star, or not just pro but all-star now. And I
Okay.
bumped up the quarter length so I can play more, and then my star player gets hurt, and so now we were running the tables and now we're struggling. So I have to, I think he's on day to day now. So I think it was like a 6 to 8 week
Okay. Okay. Good.
injury,
Good.
and now he's on day to day. So hopefully he's coming back soon. But I play that kind of stuff. And I think I'm on like my 12th season of baseball, because I like to go in and I can play a game in like
Yeah.
3 minutes and be done. And so, yeah, I love that Switch. Definitely one I'm going to get the next one of. So,
Right. Right. And that'll be one you can hold on to. You mentioned your watch, so I could see your grandkids back, in their 20s, and they want to go retro style. Like, hey,
yeah,
this is my granddad's original Apple Watch. Even though
yeah.
theirs is going to be something that has a what do they
Hologram.
call it, a
Yeah.
holographic thing dancing on their wrist. They're still going
Yeah.
to be wearing their grandpa's original Apple Watch. So,
All
all
right.
right,
Well, thanks for sticking with us, folks, for this quick discussion about games, game systems, some cool stories.
right,
Again, we'd love to get your feedback on any topics you want us to cover. We're enjoying these conversations. Like I said, the shorts seem to be gaining a lot of traction, but let us know. Let us know
yeah,
what you'd like to change. And again, no new full episodes next week. We'll be taking a week off, but we'll have some shorts out there, and we'll see you in the comments or see you in 2 weeks.
yep. Thanks everybody for listening.